Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Rascal Jester start us with a Game 1 upset against DFM there. Or rather Game 5 for us, because we have ourselves a bit of an unusual schedule. But they're back on the Rift are the Jesters, and this time they're up against AXIZ. King Naka, I know you've obviously done a little bit of research into the Jesters. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to ask you a little bit more about AXIZ now. They struggled last split. What do you want to see from them coming into this split? Because it was not a good end. It wasn't really a good split in general for the Narwhals.
Yeah, I think it's a thing to keep in mind. There are a lot of rookies on this team, and so it's definitely a
Yes.
developing kind of roster. So I think that although they did definitely struggle, I'm happy to see what they kind of bring out. They had about a 2 month break. Any more strategy they could pull out the bag, more team synergy, things like that. And so that being said, it's Teddy show. It's Teddy, 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 Teddy.
What, Teddy?
I think that.
Oh, of course,
I mean,
honey.
yeah. Yeah, I mean it's Teddy. I mean, this is the LJL
It
Teddy
is. It
show. I
is.
mean, Honey has played despite Axe's record has been I would argue one of the top 80 carries
Really
in the
has.
entire league. So I am excited to see what he can do. A lot of power picks. Ezreal, I know we saw it last game, but hopefully with a
Yeah.
little more synergy with the Ezreal. But Ezreal is looking
Yeah.
really
And
strong.
I suppose
Uh,
to me,
yeah.
yeah, because you're completely right focusing on Honey. And for us, when we saw 2020 Spring come out, Honey was signed to the Hawks.
Yes.
And that was when the Hawks finished stone dead last. And Honey honestly had a bit of a mess split.
He did.
He really struggled. Played a lot of Misfortune, didn't really do much with it, was struggling to get into team fights and do any sort of damage. And then summer came around and we're thinking, oh, Honey's doing pretty good actually. Oh yeah, this guy's pretty good. We'll keep an eye on them. And then comes spring, changes teams, gets away from the Hawks, goes into a new environment, has a bit more room to flourish with these rookies, like you were saying, and kind of establish their own game plan. And Honey, as you said, popped off. It wasn't enough to carry AXIZ to any sort of playoffs finish, but this individual player had certainly a really good showing.
They might have only got 3 wins, but remember, to get into playoffs, you only needed 4. It was that tight at the bottom end of the table. Everyone else was a little ways up in the standings, but that last final spot was open to grabs for quite a while into the split. But unfortunately for Honey, an extraordinary 600 DPM plus split in spring. He's against the one guy in the league with higher stats in Sol, who ran an obscene 700 average DPM per game last split. Tell me more about this matchup, guys. I'll throw to Naka first.
Yeah,
That's a tough
I
one.
think yeah, I mean the thing about kind of how Soul and Rascal Jesters play, right? All of the lanes are kind of feeding off each other's strengths, right? I mean, we see super duper strong top side. We see a super we have to see like a really farm heavy, really gank heavy jungler, and this kind of all like encapsulates into team fights to where Soul can just like pop off, right? But with a team like Axis, if you're fighting from like a 9K gold deficit, you're just not going to do a lot of damage. I mean, it's definitely something that's going to have to be worked around with Axis, especially in this kind of particular game. But the good thing is for Axis, if there's a time to start doing like super duper LJL Teddy kind of comps, it's now.
Yeah.
Lulu Kog'Maw, absolutely prevalent. We talked about
Ezreal
Ezreal
Lulu, yeah,
before.
we saw that. That worked,
Ezreal
right? That
Lulu,
worked, yeah.
All right, all right.
Ezreal Lulu, yeah.
Shutting it down briefly there before we end up on too much of a tangent. These analysts, I tell you, these days, hard to find ones that don't make my job hard work, I say. But last couple things before we head into pick and ban. Nymera, win conditions for Rascal Jesters. What do you want to see them do to take this game over?
Exactly what they did just there.
Okay.
Rattle the early game, understand your game plan, know where you can push the knife in deepest, right? Where if, particularly with a team like DFM, when they have been less coordinated and maybe having some of the post-MSI blues and not coming in at the highest level of synergy, we have seen exactly the same from Hoglet connecting with the rest of his team. You need to be able to punish that team when they're not being coordinated and strike hard.
Okay, on the other side, Naka, I think you've already kind of highlighted who you want to be carrying, but tell me how you want AXIZ to try and enable Honey to carry this team to victory, or whoever else you need to do to step up to have a chance in this game.
Yeah, I think that Honey needs to get his icy hot ready to go because his back is gonna need to be real strong for this
Oh boy.
game. Uh, and I think that his support specifically kind of I would like to see like, not only like an engaged champ that can like kind of sit back and play for Honey's strengths and then let the man do work. I mean, he's
Okay.
proven it before. Let's see it again.
All right, thank you so much. Well, with that, we're going to head to pick and ban. Thank you again. Neck of the second. We'll see you after, surprisingly, the second game. See you in a moment or two. But for now, that leaves myself a nightmare to get down to business in casting
Once again
this game. Rascal Jester's on the blue side. It'll be AXIZ over on the red. You know what we didn't do last game? A player rundown. So I'll do that this time because, of course, it's Kinatu, Hachimecha, Recap, Soul, and Secret making up the Rascal Jesters.
And on the other side, the narwhals, they seem like an animal that came out of Pangea. And we've got ourselves, Hoglet, Megamin, Honey, and Nemo. We're not finding Nemo, we're finding Nemo. That's the way that name goes.
Well,
and,
I'm going to make sure this pun and chain of conversation goes extinct, and instead we'll go on to something a little bit more appropriate.
Without my puns, I'm a fish out of water.
You're revolving, mate. That's what's going on. That's how you get better as a caster.
I mean, the LJL certainly isn't, because there's no Gwen ban, there's no Viego ban. They're just not having any of it.
Well, unfortunately, that's the way it is. We're not all troglodytes like you. We'll move on to instead this final ban. That was unnecessarily mean, but unfortunately it fed the conversation. Lulu final ban here. You're right. No Gwen, no Viego ban, and I wonder whether Rascal Gestures punish that option, and they do exactly that.
Okay,
Gwen
cool.
First pick, first time thus far in the LJL.
They really do move in her. I don't know. I was going to go for a Jurassic Park thing. You know, there's a very historical kind of thing to this. But it's going to be Gwen locked in. As we know, it is a three-way flex potentially. In practice, it's been more of a two-way flex between jungle and top. Hachimecha, Kinatu, both been players to pick up some more of those stranger picks, I suppose, going for something like... Hachimecha with his canes and his Skarnas and everything else. Kinatu more at home on something like that Renekton, or Camille, like the Nart, but has shown, as Naka was saying, even in the pre-game of the first game, that they are maybe the second best top laner on their day in the region. That's a tall order, of course, in this split if Rayfarki has decided to dine us with his presence and his form. He got God King Darius earlier on in the day and certainly made the enemy team sweat a little. That was hilarious to watch. Really happy for the lads casting that one. So much fun. The response from AXIZ was two other very high priority picks. The Rumble, which has been around since MSI, alongside the Nocturne. That's normally been seen as a counter to things like the Gnar, but they're feeling Equalizer plus Paranoia is enough global response to cause some trouble here. You know what? For AXIZ, for me, this feels like... They practiced a combo against with certain conditions set in stone, and now those conditions have been removed. They don't necessarily know what to do with it, because most of the time when you have the Rumble and you have yourselves a Nocturne, you really want to be playing into something like a Kog'Maw or a Varus that cannot get out of that kind of damage.
Yes.
Varus is awful versus that kind of composition. Ezreal, Yuumi, Gwen, with the amount of ability to disengage from those kind of fights, I think AXIZ have already chosen a suboptimal combo, and they're going to have to fight really hard to make sure that they can start winning some of these mid to late game fights where they need to be landing those ultimates.
And I just really love this option for Rascal Justice. Like, they're not upset to have Sol and Ezreal. Like, he's phenomenal on the champion.
Of course not.
And I also think running the Yuumi there as well allows that lane to play weak side, because they're going to want to focus towards Gwen. We've been hearing a lot of top pro players basically saying, like, Gwen, yes, the enemy team needs to put a lot of attention towards Gwen, but so does the team that has Gwen. Because either she gets really ahead in 1v9s or she gets behind and it's a little bit useless.
And the thing for me is that, so, Rascal Jester knew that potentially something like a Kai'Sa Nautilus could come in, and that is a really good kill combo versus something like the Yuumi lanes. The hook lands right at level 1, you're forced out of lane, or you die. But because they saw that the R1, R2 was instead the Nocturne and the Rumble, you can't lock in both bot lane pairings. They lock in the Nautilus, and then they say, now we have two bans to throw out probably the strongest laning AD carries. They don't actually get to get rid of all of them, because that means that they are going to go up against the Kai'Sa Nautilus. It's not against the Kalista, it's not against the Varus. I guess it's still... That makes it playable but difficult, as opposed to this is where you are going to bleed out of this match. So, with our Kai'Sa locked in, strong kill line from AXIZ, what do Rascal Jesters do to stymie that and get some pressure on the top side?
Absolutely, AXIZ have locked in what looks to be basically dive and follow up with the likes of Paranoia, Equalizer, Killer Instinct, and all of that kind of ensemble. The response from Rascal Jester, though, is recaps genuinely pretty fantastic. Zoe and a Hecarim in for Hachimetra to offer some frontline. Hecarim plus Yumi is a phenomenal combo. I've used phenomenal a few too many times, but it bears repeating one last. And of course,
you should use some more niche words like Pangea. That's what I do.
That's a prototypical comment from Nymera there. We're going to see probably a Conqueror Hecarim, I imagine, these days with the likes of Divine Sundra. It's kind of been the rumour that Hecarim may be returning with those kind of options in Tosi, but that actually plays out. Megamin, though, with the final option, decides to go for a Lucian in mid lane.
Okay, so this 2v2 has become a little bit more explosive. A bit more Cambrian explosive, some would say, if we're going on the evolution-like puns yet again. We saw what Nation could do with this earlier in the day. It was Eclipse Lucian coming in, and it was a very large amount of damage. That culling suddenly becomes a kill threat just on its own. You don't even need to get the full duration of even the culling to start going through with all of your Manamune procs and stuff like that. It just kills you outright. You don't need to get you press the attack down. It's that much damage. Interested to see what build this is going to be. I think Lucian can very much pressure the Zoe in the early game, get through to mid game, and you haven't pushed them around enough though. Suddenly those bubbles lead to a lot of very key poke and kill moments before the objectives get started.
That is the way of it. Lucian into Orianna, Syndra, all of these mage matchups you have, basically until your first item to make them suffer in mid lane. Then it gets a bit trickier. Megamin started off Spring Split with a couple explosive performances on the likes of Syndra and Silas. Had a bit of a Z game in there as well, I believe, but it's been a hot minute since we've been really impressed with this guy going towards the Lucian. It's back to agency, it's back to aggression. See whether he can pull it off now. He's got a little bit more experience under his boot. It's a tough team to do it against, Rascal Jesters, who've just taken down the MSI representatives and arguably the best team to ever been assembled in the LJL.
Not arguably. On paper, DFM are the strongest team in the region that we've ever had. They're very much like,
just beat them.
You know, like the 2017 Warriors were one of the most stacked teams in history within that sport. That's the same for DFM. Within this region, they have that kind of caliber. And Rascal Jesters took them to pieces.
They did, genuinely.
So now, AXIZ have to stand out a team which just did that and say, oh, poo.
Yes.
Let's see what we can do in return for that. They do have themselves a really strong level 6 spiking team. On the other side, though, I am not going to back Nocturne to beat Gwen. I think that the Hecarim, although Hecarim is not a champion that messes around with top early into the game. I think in this comp, it's absolutely fine, and it provides the engage this team needed. If it is going to be the Divine Sundra, if it is going to be Conqueror, if it is going to be a lot of damage, if they survive through to the mid game, Axe is going to be... They have to be very, very wary of Hachimetra and the amount of power he has over each of these individual champions on the Rift. None of them want to get ulted at all.
You stick the cat book onto either a rampaging Hecarim or a fed Gwen, and there aren't that many acceptable options for AXIZ if they get to start wailing on their terms. On the other side, though, really good collapse from AXIZ. Like, if you get someone in a side lane and suddenly Rumble equalizes from a screen and a half away, Paranoia comes in, Depth Charge and Killer Instinct and Culling, you can dive on someone and absolutely obliterate them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, speaking of the collapse, that will also then start we need to start talking about teleports and global plays. We know what's going to happen with the Nocturne, but with the Gwen, interestingly, if Gwen W is down at the time that the Nocturne ult's cast, I'm fairly sure they actually retain vision, because they can't be targeted by the Nocturne ult. It's much like having a Banshee's Veil when Nocturne pops ult. The ult goes off and the screen goes a funny color, but you still retain all vision, and that means you can still teleport very importantly. So keep an eye out for that one interaction. Seen it happen 1 or 2 times. I'm fairly sure that's how it works. If not, please correct me in Twitch chat. I love being wrong, apparently, as Sam loves to repeat about all those things when it comes into life.
Well, never mind about being wrong. We've got game on instead, and we'll see whether these teams have made a wrong step in draft. I have to say, I'm pretty excited to see the Jesters draft. I think they've got some great options here. I'm glad to see somebody in the LJL willing to pull out Gwen with the Ignite, no less. But AXIZ, you know, they've got themselves a good comp identity. I just don't know whether it came at too hefty a price.
That's the thing, because immediately I said, oh, that's a really nice combo. Into a Varus or into a Kog'Maw. And then the Ezreal's locked in because they did it too early. They showed their hand too early. And while I'm sure they're very practiced with this combo, as I said, potentially what they were practicing against with those conditions set in stone, suddenly fell away from them when they were left in a bit of an awkward situation. Of course, that could all fall apart in this game as well, with a couple of early kills. Suddenly you get some side lane pressure, suddenly the Lucian's pushing people around. We're yet to see that, though. You can see the overheat coming in from the Rumble, as is so common as well, with that W start level 1 with the cooldown reduction shard. But Kinatu has walked into the enemy side of the map with an
That's
Ignite,
so rude.
a Hope, a Prayer, an Ignite, and an E.
Yeah, and a skip and slash, I believe, is the term. Yeah, it's basically with that Victorian accent. I'm telling you, Jack the Ripper was a woman, and she had blue hair, and used a giant pair of scissors. Jack the Snipper was actually the real name. Just got renamed over the years.
That is horribly bad. But I mean, in this case, Kinatu does have the Ignite. I mean, you can pretty much take whatever combat summon you want on the Gwen on a side lane. Just take the teleport as well, and you're fine in that top side. Really interested to see how priority works out in this early levels, though. And with the tier start from the Ezreal Yuumi, how much CS can AXIZ and Honey and Nemo deny from this Ezreal Yuumi?
That is so sad. Skip and slash is just so disgusting early on. There's the Conqueror stacked. Of course, you've got to remember, all of those autos when you've got skip and slash on are empowered, so you just stack Conqueror faster than anybody else at level 1. It is just nasty.
So if you do 3 autos, 4 stacks apiece, and you got it. That's cool. You got yourself the Conqueror at that point. So it means that, even though they have the Corrupting Potion, does give them the burst of HP with the Time Warp Tonic, and it's a very strong early game rune, nothing is really beating Gwen at level 1. Not even Tryndamere beats Gwen at level 1 if you don't get access to the wave. That's how strong this champion is right now, but it's going to have to 1v2 because that's the Hoglet.
We've seen what happens when Rumbles try to go for ganks against Team Liquid. Last night didn't work out. The Ignite went down for Kinatu. But this time, they managed to make it work to AXIZ. A solid early gank. Gwen burns Ignite, still falls down. First blood goes the way of Hoglet. Nice early play from AXIZ, who will look to continue the aggression. Hoglet has got Smite and could maybe force Hatchemetcha out here, and does so right now. Could be a little aggressive now that Gwen's coming in behind, and now Hoglet needs to be afraid. Watch for the bubble through the wall from Recop, who was roaming there as well, but
I like the thought.
Nice idea.
I like the thought. It means that Kinatu is forced to respond. They're going to teleport back anyway, but it's just, if Hatchemetcha just slightly leashed it further, a little bit closer. They don't have the flash, they have the ghost. If you hit that second harpoon, flash in with an overheated flame spitter, 2 autos, if you get that, I think that's pretty much a kill at that point.
Probably is.
I think there, Hatchemetcha is in serious kill threat. They did still have the smite though, they still have had the extra ability to heal. I think Hoglet was just seeing if there was anything available to them. Gonna double scuttle for their troubles anyway, and go back to farming their side of the jungle. Hoglet, as one of the most mercurial players in the LJL so far, seems to be coin flipping towards heads at this point, or whatever the better side of the coin is.
He's been so good in early games before, got great leads, and then struggled to hand the ball off to somebody, and obviously needed somebody else on the team to follow up sometimes, and that's just wasn't so much of an option in the prospects. Obviously, you're running the Chem Tank junglers who start things really well, but aren't the best at finishing them necessarily. This time round, you get to be on things like Rumble. So much more damage, so much more solo carry potential if you get far enough ahead, and it's a good start right now for the AXIZ jungler.
It is, but so something that Melvin Isle was actually saying earlier as well, in terms of, how is this region adapting and evolving? We all had a lot of questions earlier in the day about, well, where the hell's the Gwen? Why is it not being picked or banned? Where's the Viego? That's not even being touched either. What's happening here? So we do see the Gwen here as well from Rascal Jester. Seems to be doing a little bit better. And again, all of the prehistoric mega continent jokes aside, there have been times in the past too where junglers particularly have struggled to adapt from the farming to the ganking to the different styles of play that have been required of that role within the competitive, the professional level of League of Legends. Hoglet was never really that great of a Graves play. He tried it and failed multiple times, but he was always a fantastic volley bear, always great at the perma-ganking, the Olaf, everything like that. Something like the Rumble is another archetype yet again, so we're going to have to see where does this fall on the Hoglet spectrum of awful to great.
I will say that early gank doesn't tell us a lot, because that's more about jungle senses than champion senses, if you know what I mean. That's good pathing. That's punishing play patterns in your enemy. That's cerebral stuff. It's not mechanical stuff in a lot of ways. And, that's sometimes been a lot of Hoglet strength, Hatchemetcha's strength, honestly, as well, who's been normally very good with those level 1 through 3 first clear stuff, as in the bot side. Secret to get ignited there on the Yuumi, but he's a Yuumi and we'll get to hop back on. Does have both Summoners burn, but it's a Cleanse and Ignite burn by Honey and Nemo respectively as well. So just a couple combat Summoners on either side, down for the count right now.
So, of course, we set this up very early and said, what's going to happen with this 2v2? What's going to happen with this 1v1? Hoglet finds himself around the enemy blue buff again.
Oh, there's the paranoia, and Hatchemetcha has the fear proc and goes down. But Gwen goes in for a very nicely powered Q. Still not going to be enough, doesn't get the true damage. And it's an easy kill for AXIZ. 2-0 on the board. Good start for the Narwhals.
It's a bit of a slap on the back from the Gwen as the two murderers of the Hecarim leave that top side. Jungle doesn't really achieve that much. First ult of the game from Inno, a player that struggled a lot in spring, comes up well. Hatchemetcha goes down for another death for their team. Suddenly, top side for AXIZ looking pretty good.
It definitely is. That was a very nice attempt. You saw the ghost pop from Hatchemetcha still was enough. Took too long to get out of dodge there. And solid invade from Hoglet, who's just tracking this Hecarim exceptionally well. Look, this is blind. They have no idea.
So Hoglet hugs the wall. So I think that's knowing top lane tendencies and ward positioning. Inno hits level 6, roams down. Nocturnal is really not that long range at level 1. It's about the length of a max range Nidalee Spear even. It's like only 1,000 to 2,000 units. And recap wishes he had some extra range on.
Good flash.
Almost the flash predict on the hook. Does get out though.
Nice attempt there by Nemo. And I'm loving his proactivity from AXIZ, making the Jesters sweat just a little bit. Hecarim still waiting to get to level 6. Hoglet hits it first and starts to do some work. As it stands, though, we've got ourselves about 1,000 gold lead for AXIZ early on into the game. Herald will be spawning in about 30 seconds, and there is a dragon on the table, which Hoglet is starting up and flame roasting for a nice early breakfast in this game. And that'll be another tick in the box for AXIZ in this early game.
Wish I got breakfast before I started streaming today.
I bought you lunch!
Yeah, and it was very nice, but it's not breakfast, is it?
What about second breakfast,
They are functionally different meals. I take offense to that. Just as Megaman takes offense to Hatchemetcha takes offense to the ward being put down and scythes through it. Only once. Doesn't kill it.
Well, that's enough conversation about breakfast right now, as Hatchemetcha might be in a spot of bother. He's still going to smite away these Raptors, and now he's finally got level 6. I don't think he's going to be forced to pop anything expensive there.
Yeah,
had himself a devastating charge. That's the E ability, and gets his way out of damage.
Yeah, no horse burgers for Megaman. He says, "Get out of my jungle. Breakfast means breakfast." Doesn't have the culling, so we can't kill him.
That's edging dangerously close to a topic I'm not willing to talk about on stream. Instead, Hoglet might have overengaged here. There was more people than he was expecting and falls down to shutdown, going the way of Zoe. Paranoia is popped a little too late, and the only nightmare there is the death of Hoglet for AXIZ.
Lucian is not there to provide any sort of threat. Teleports up to the play, and Hoglet does not read the play well. Recap is there first, walks into very dangerous territory, and they this time are the player which is going down.
Dangerously low and just goes down, gets caught by that last final chapter, and a bit too riveting it turns out. Likes himself a bit of reading in the Nautilus, just sent back to the watery deeps he came from.
Yeah, that last chapter has the quill on the parchment, and it just puts down Nemo's name in Death Note style. Goes down for that.
That was way more angry than I thought it was going to be. It's not Medjai's. That's normally our Death Note reference.
Well,
but I like
I'm sorry.
That
well, I mean, if I'm not going to get my breakfast, I'm at least going to have some potato chips and eat them.
Finding Nemo, it's on the last page. Written in blood.
It's in the glossary of Nautiluses that died to Ezreal Yuumi.
Yeah, it's written by Secret found him. AXIZ invaded to once again into Rascal Jester's blue side jungle. We'll start stealing that away. We're going to replay down towards the top side, not towards the bot side, and you can see Hoglet just isn't aware there's going to be so many people.
I mean, I get that AXIZ understand the wave crash is coming in and know that the dive is coming with it, but they just don't have any information besides that. Rumble does not have themselves a stopwatch. They don't have the ability to elongate that play. You're not someone like that Volibear with the tankier front line as well. Yes, you've been dueling well with the Hecarim so far, but it's not nearly enough to really overcome that play.
Just not far enough away. Flash from Sol there to get himself in range to angle those really riveting words to ensure Nemo falls down. Great kill. And what was supposed to be a bit of a passive bot lane, but you see the level 6 is hit, and suddenly Ezreal Yuumi start doing Ezreal Yuumi things.
I mean, you can say that, but I was pegging this as actually the Kai'Sa Nautilus almost have a bit of an obligation to bully around this Ezreal Yuumi if they can, because this is meant to be a kill lane, and put it this way, if there was an LPL or an international match, you'd expecting level 1, level 2 flashes for Nautilus passives to stop the Yuumi reconnecting.
Sure.
And getting some kills off of that. It's not really been going that way, though. Honey doing okay by themselves, but they're falling behind in gold. Sol and Secret, they were our premier bot lane of Spring. They're holding their own here. They're going to scale magnificently into the mid game.
Allow me to rectify my statement then. I was assuming that Sol and Secret might be a little bit more laid back in this one, a little bit more passive, but they saw their angle, they hit the level 6s, and they did exactly what they wanted to, and they come out of that play pretty happy indeed. We're at even gold state now as a result of those 2 kills that have taken on the way of Rascal Jesters, and the only real difference right now is the dragon that is over towards AXIZ, and that's in trade for the Herald that's in Hatchemet's inventory right now, and see whether he wants to put that down some point towards the spawning of this dragon number 2.
Look, if Ezreal Yuumi get rolling in this game, if they get the plates from that Herald, or by other means, if they get more kills, AXIZ, I don't think they have answers in this game to them. Nocturne is going to fly in, and there's a chance that you can catch the Ezreal napping if maybe they go in for a trade when they don't know. If they don't know that Nocturne is missing from the map and they use the Arcane Shift too aggressively, maybe you can then follow up without that mobility available and shut them down.
That's a bit rough. Had the control war, but there's just not enough time there. The Hallowed Mist goes down and the fear is coming through, but massive devastating charge. Getting knocked back under turret, and he's one final kill. Does so. Hatchemet is there. But look, Kinatu's health bar still so healthy. That's going to be a flame roasted horse though for Hoglet. Makes it a 1-for-1 right now. Kinatu just doesn't quite have the cooldown on Skipper Sasma going back in. Nearly gets himself a lot of danger, but Hoglet is just at the edge of that and managed to stay out of most of the snips there.
These are champions with, again, that kind of conditional damage. The charges on the Q recap has
the... just flashes for days.
I hate this champion so much.
Just goes, well, that's 1 flash for me, that's 2 flash for me, I've got my own flash as well. And Hoglet's like, I was 3 screens away. What is this?
1. 2 flash. Stop the count, goddammit. Get Zoe away from those summoners. Again, we were just talking about Rumble and Gwen having conditional damage. It's the...
Can we get a count Zoe skin?
No.
I would like, it could be like a real, it'd be great, I'm down for that.
I'm going to have a count of the amount of times I asked for her to be deleted from the mid lane. I don't want to play against this champion.
Just because you play Ari, you can't play the matchup.
I hate that you're so accurate with that. I hate that you're so appropriate. And I hate that Gwen is going to be on the kill board as well and show us why they have to get banned.
Yeah, it does land an empowered Q there, but it doesn't really get enough damage out of that quite yet. You can see did stop off for Seeker's Arm Guards. Hasn't really got themselves a full item complete yet, so not quite as much damage as you might be anticipating, but has a Herald to boot, so we'll be getting some more gold, and that'll be feeling pretty good for Kanadu, who sticks around for that, and some going into the inventory of Hatchemet as well. Mountain Drake's alive, but you can see Hoglet's on it, and instead, Inno might be in danger here. Manages to buffer away from the devastating charge, though, with a well-timed spell shield.
Inno's been doing pretty okay. If he gets the pass, we can heal quite a lot of this, too.
Oh, man, that's a lot of damage from Gwen, though. And Hatchemet was going to tank the tower, but it does enough to get himself out of danger there. But that... If there had been an Ignite up for Kinatu there, it isn't. But if there was, that would have been quite a dead Nocturne.
No, but then I look at Inno and I'm like, yeah, I mean, if he gets to the wave, he has his passive. He's going to hit 2 champions too. Suddenly that's a lot of healing from the Umbra Blades. Does get that through. Maris come through. Now there's the Riftmaker in inventory from Gwen. Wouldn't be trying that again. But in fairness, Inno, who again, as we said, struggled last split, was basically okay on Renekton and falling apart on anything else, has found this Nocturne pick, doing pretty okay with it. The AXIZ are within touching distance of the gold, even though the plates did go the way to Rascal Jester, and they do have themselves a minor lead. AXIZ not out of it yet. Again, my worry for this composition was, though, if you don't have that lead, if you don't have the ability to solo dive in as the Nocturne and really threaten this Ezreal, then you're never going to get to them through the Yuumi. You're probably just going to fall apart at the seams. I am worried for AXIZ heading into this mid-game.
Yeah, and, credit to Inno for staying relatively even, considering the amount of pressure and attention from everybody up there. It's been certainly a hot spot. I think both top laners have come out of that mostly in one piece. It's been the junglers, interestingly, that have been the ones that have been a little bit battered by the attention towards that top side. But they're both in a position to cause some damage. I'll say Gwen's come out probably slightly better, if only because she's been able to get over and pick up the Riftmaker before Nocturne has got his first item complete. Honey takes a bit of a nasty trade in the bot side, but will be mostly okay. You can see jungle proximity there. slightly more from Hatchemetcha, interestingly, considering how much attention we saw from Hoglet early on in the game, particularly.
Well, no, but the thing I'll say about Hoglet is that he was time efficient with what
Yes.
he did. He just ran top lane, basically didn't even stop. He just right-clicked on top lane, had a margarita, which Rascal Jester are known for, and ended up at top lane, picked themselves up a kill, had themselves a barbecue up there with the overheated flame spitter, and then just walked away on their merry business. And then, honestly, they've had a higher proximity to the enemy jungle rather than their own lanes. That's how they've been impacting this early game, by messing with Hatchemetcha, not necessarily directly influencing their lanes.
Well, never mind Margaritas. We've got a Herald in mid lane, which I expect will be a slightly different flavour for AXIZ. Don't quite clear the tower.
Close.
But the final auto does it from Megamin. Takes a tower shot for his trouble, but I don't think we'll mind too much. He's got himself a Gale Force in inventory. In fact, alongside the Kraken Slayer for Honey, of course, Night Harvester being the choice for this Rumble. On the other side, you can see a plethora of completed mythics as well, and that means that when the Dragon's due to spawn at some point in the next few minutes, still a little ways off, we can expect to see both teams wanting to contest. No team miles behind and not happy to start fighting.
So, speaking of those fights and when they're going to start fighting, when it comes to it, I think at this point in the game, and particularly the later this game goes, the more pressure there is on Megamin to do a lot of work here, actually. With that Gale Force, you are pretty much the person who can go in, get those really slick Light Slinger passive resets. You might have the ability to shut down the Ezreal before the second Yuumi heal comes in. Because the first one's going to come through regardless, you're never going to be able to deny that. But I'm looking at Megamin, they're going to have more burst damage than someone like a Nocturne, even though if the Fear comes off, they are going to do an extra couple of autos too. But Megamin is going to have to pick up the DPS check towards the end of the fight, because they need to be the one putting out the consistent damage. I think they're going to have a bit of an edge on that with the Gale Force compared to the Kraken Slayer from Honey.
Got to keep your eyes on Hoglet as well. Just ticked over to level 11, so second rank of Equalizer available for this potentially tumultuous Ocean Soul Point fight. Might be looking to use it a touch early, though, because Recap is all by their lonesome under this tower. Hatchemetcha's coming, though, and Sol is here as well. They're looking maybe to bait this. Hecarim can be here real fast.
And particularly with the Yuumi speed as well, that
Hoglet,
makes them quicker.
He's just by himself. He's going to have to flash out, I think. There's the final chapter, throws out the Equalizer. And we'll get out, but it's flash. But Hatchemetcha just has to walk up, and it's in trade for one ultimate.
So, one ultimate for nothing else. Hoglet just wants to keep walking back. Maybe let Nemo do that instead. Without having a stopwatch, a flash, or the ultimate, the fighting prowess of AXIZ is much, much less now. What's their goal here? Why are they sticking around? I know the Dragon's up in 30. I don't think you have the position
Honey,
for
that
this.
was very risky walking up to the Zoomies empowered Hecarim, but felt confident enough, and I perhaps was a little bit more scared than I needed to be. Didn't pull the trigger to Hatchemetcha, and just a chunk back and forth there. 20 seconds or so until this Ocean Dragon. And it's AXIZ who have most priority in the river, but there is a ward in the back of the pit, which Rascal Jesters have not had swept out yet, so they do know what's going on for now.
And a lot of that, in fairness, is because of the bot lane presence of Hoglet. You can't control both ends of the river if you're going that deep. Actually, a bit of an unorthodox teleport from Recap, who says, we need mid-prio now. We've just secured bot. We've put our time into that. With the Hecarim coming down and forcing out the ultimate, you can do that. Looks like, though, with the angles being changed about, it's first swing at the Dragon for AXIZ. They're starting it. They're trying to finish.
There's the Paranoia trying to buy space, stop any teleport easiness, but that's going to be a big equalizer. Hoglet solo needs to secure the Dragon. It resets! That's a disaster, but Megamin is still winning the back end of the fight, but Gwen, Kinaju just cuts him down to size. It's a steal on the Dragon, though. Final auto from Lucian will do what it's worth. You asked for Megamin to do enough work. Flash from Sol. Forced the flash from Nemo. He's still going. The Mystic shots are stinging, that's for sure. Divine Sunderer cutting these mere mortals down to size at the end of the fight.
This time, Nemo doesn't hold on to the flash, gets out of the plate, does just about live, and AXIZ walk away with Soul Point. Okay, Ocean Soul in this kind of game, when you are trying to maybe go for the more elongated fights with Flame Spitter, Zhonya's running in the front line, could be a turning point for this. Question is, can you do it again at the fourth time of asking at the next Ocean Dragon spawn? Okay, how does this start? We have the Paranoia, we have the teleport. Problem is, though, Gwen's already here. You're not actually stopping teleports. The directional fight is very good for Rascal Jester. It allows Ezreal and Zoe to choose their angles very effectively. The Equalizer does take down Recap to a very low level, but Inno doesn't have the extra damage and certainly doesn't have the Paranoia into Zoe that was used earlier on to finish off Recap, which means that AXIZ do not have the carry disadvantage at that point. or discrepancy rather. They didn't take down the Zoe early and then have the Lucian and the Kai'Sa wailing away with just the Ezreal to respond on the other side. They didn't get that numbers advantage. They fall apart.
Inno might be in danger here. There was a 3-man gang looking to potentially catch him out, but they don't feel confident enough, and Hoglet with the missing pings was also aware that something felt a little off towards the Baron pit side of the map. And we're sat at a continually close game. Yes, it's a minor gold lead to Rascal Jester of just over 1,000, so probably, well, let's be fair, about 2,000 gold. So, you know, a gold lead, but at 21 minutes in the game, that's not huge. That's playable for either side, especially when the other side has soul point as well.
Sure, but then, okay, so then you're talking about, okay, so you have some Ice Spice, so you have Dragon Spikes, and you have
no!
Nautilus.
No! No! I'm sorry you had to witness that, ladies and gentlemen, because that was straight up murder live on air. Oh my days, Nautilus just disappeared.
And that's actually going to force the Equalizer out in defense in wave clear. It's going to go in.
Oh, well, there's the onslaught of shadows, and the turret ain't going to save you now. Mega Man turns around, gets one, and maybe they've gone too deep, but the Hallowed Mist tanks it all up. You might be good at shutting down Spirit Solutions, but you're not that good, it turns out.
Doesn't have the tools for the job on that one. Rascal Jesters get a little bit hypey there. Don't get what they want out of it. They do get a good health bar trade towards the end, I suppose. Honey going to pick up the tower, the wave at tower. Though AXIZ take themselves a micro play advantage there. They lose their support, but he's back on the map now. Now it's Rascal Jesters, which are resetting. AXIZ have first crack at securing vision around an area of the map they want to play the next couple of minutes around.
Now, they could, if they were feeling bold, think about maybe baiting around the dragon, especially considering Hatcher matches only just respawn, but didn't really have the space or time. The other thing is AXIZ don't have a lot of turrets. Neither team have a lot of turrets. Only a single turret apiece. Bot lane for the Jesters, mid lane for AXIZ, which is certainly more valuable when it comes to controlling setup for these objectives. But that's just not been the aim of the game. It has been setup around neutrals. It has been pressure around dives, really.
That's LJL. I mean, actually, most of the LJL doesn't even do the dive bit. It's just, let's go to the objective. That's fun. I hear that's a really good holiday location this time of year. Haven't you heard about the weather?
Pool party skins unite.
Heck yeah. So, Mega Man, going back towards that bot side, and now this Lucian has 3 kills. We set up earlier. Okay, what happens with the... I mean, that's another equalizer throw in mid. They AXIZ just on complete mid lane wave clear duty, but it's mid lane matchup. You expect the Lucian to push out the Zoe more than we saw this game, but how in regards of killing the Ezreal in late game fights, there was a lot of pressure being put onto the dive squad of AXIZ in terms of the Kai'Sa, the Lucian, and of course the Equalizer Paranoia combo too, to actually kill the Ezreal before the second Yuumi heal comes in. This Ezreal is going to go for the Frozen Heart third item. There's going to be a lot less ability to kill this Ezreal once that's completed. AXIZ need to find themselves the advantages, they need to find themselves the angles, they need to kill Sol.
They finally get the mid lane tier 1. They've been sieging that for what feels like the last 5 minutes. Hoglet being a little bold with his positioning there, moving forward towards a bush that was certainly not owned by him anymore. But Mega Man will trade all that pressure in mid for a tower in bot, and he's who I've got my eyes on for AXIZ right now. 3-0-0, 2 items in inventory, nearly towards a third. He is certainly a carry threat for AXIZ. But he needs to be a bit aware that while he and Inno are both not there, they're not going to be around to start fights unless they pull the teleport. It's going to be a double teleport in. In fact, now Inno pulls the Paranoia looking for a target to go in on, but they just don't feel comfortable enough. Okay. And the double teleport and Paranoia burned for absolutely nothing.
This is what we saw early in the day between I believe it was CJ and Burning Core, where we had just it might not have been that one, but we saw
Hawks,
a couple.
I think
It was Hawks, yes, and we saw just so much fear of the encroaching fight that because you can't land clean engages that you start or going unorthodox.
Oh boy, does have to get out there with the Relentless Pursuit, but it got a little bit scary there. Culling just completely neutered by the fact that Hallowed Mist exists, and it just doesn't happen there.
No, it doesn't, and Kinatu successfully disengaging, and every time they push up, you can see how afraid AXIZ are getting. That's now, what, 3-4 equalizers put onto the mid lane to try and keep Rascal Jester away from their bricks and mortar of their towers. They don't want to lose any more priority mid lane. They're struggling there. Hoglet walking into his own jungle is seen by absolutely everyone on Rascal Jester. It seems like Rascal Jester, even with this minimal gold lead, are doing okay in terms of their pressure. They're playing confidently, and you can see just in the body language of how this game is progressing that AXIZ don't look too comfortable.
This has been a thing for AXIZ since spring. They'd have some games where they got things happening in the early game, but it would get tight, it would get nervy in the late game. They just wouldn't be able to make it work. And they've just lost the soul, obviously, because that dragon has got that fourth dragon's gone down. They can now set up around this Baron, but the last few equalizers have been to clear up midway.
Absolutely.
They've not been aggressive.
It's funny you mention the whole getting very tetchy in the late game, anxious, scared, and not being able to close things out. One of the games which they did close out, they did win, was their first matchup versus Rascal Jester. Just a reminder, AXIZ have started in 2020 0-6 and then 0-8. Spring for AXIZ was their strongest start ever, picking up 3 wins. But that was where the good news ended. They ended up in a worse record than their 2020 splits, because at least then they had themselves Coach Yang, who's now on DFM's roster, backing them up, developing them as a team, and making them become this Cinderella story team, where they would mount a late resurgence into the later parts of the split. AXIZ last split at least managed to take down Rascal Jester, but that was not nearly the same kind of fairy tale. AXIZ now need to work to reclaim that kind of image and bring that kind of form back to this 2021 season.
Well, it's the battle of the AD carries right now. It's 3 for Ezreal, it's 3 for Megamin. Flash away from Hoglet. Just don't have control over any of the bushes. It feels very difficult until it gets in. Recap manages to buffer away from the dredge line because, of course, Portal Jump does force Zoe back to where she started. All the while, though, things looking just a touch scary for AXIZ, who once again huddling around this mid lane tier 2, but just not along for the world. Nemo goes in looking for the depth charge. That's a flash away. The equalizer comes out, and dead is Hatchametra. Jungler down already is a good start. It's going to be more as Recap falls as well, and AXIZ finally pull the trigger, finally get 2, and can look to shove in and try and get something for their time.
This situation for AXIZ does present itself with a winning scenario. Was after Recap, there's Nemo.
He's going to turn around, try and get something here. Soul's in danger, flashing away, trying to stay alive best they can, but look at the backside. Kinatu is here, gone golden, has got 1 already, but then there is Secret. Gwen plus Yuumi is so much healing, so much damage. The fear proc is good for Ino, now has to flash away from Soul, who's hunting, got Arcane Shift and Zoomies. Hits that Mystic Shot, empowered by Divine Sundra, and suddenly the 2-shot barrage is inches away from claiming a few more lives. AXIZ on the rampant, running away. They're corralled towards their own towers. Gwen gets another 2, and it is disaster from 2 men up. They'll end up 3 down. Near enough an ace for AXIZ.
Rascal Jester pull out a victory after a momentary win. For AXIZ, that situation presented themselves with an option they hadn't maybe had the option to do before. Separate the Ezreal, take them out of the equation, focus on the rest of the Rascal Jester's comp. And that only works for as long as Ezreal is out of the fight, though. Once he gets that second Arcane Shift up, once the Yuumi starts healing and speeding these people back into the fray as well, you've already used your big engage tools, you can't separate him off again. Soul, Secret, and Kinatu clean them up.
Gwen was alive, Ezreal was alive, there was a Yuumi there to buff them up, and there wasn't a lot of way to shut them down. They did all of that in that fight, it turns out, and it's looking more and more like Rascal Jesters. Maybe it's not as clean as it was versus DFM. In fact, not maybe, it's definitely not as clean as it was versus DFM, but we're starting to see some late game steel in the nerves of Rascal Jesters that's allowing them to outplay some of these tricky fights they find themselves in.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of it has started from this all-encompassing pressure even from the even gold state, because every time they push into mid, AXIZ are starting to throw something at them, maybe unwisely so. They've been throwing out so many equalizers and defensive abilities that they need on the engage to try and stave off the attack, that they're not prepared for the fight. At least in that last one, it was Nemo flashing forward before those equalizers and the other abilities were used, but Hoglet. This is exactly why they have been trying to avoid this situation for so long. The siege from Rascal Jester is straight dirty.
Ezreal plus Zoe with Yuumi to back him up is quite a lot of poke. You can siege like nobody's business with that little pairing, and of course they can look for a dive as well with the Hecarim. So it just gets a bit scary. Nemo's going to go in and try and pull the trigger, but he's taken so low, the Hallowed Mist does a lot of work to black things out. Look at the back end of the fight though. In goes Honey trying to get as much damage as they can with the Acathian Rain, but they're threaded by needlework. Hatchametra turns up as well. Gwen snips them all, cuts them down to size, and it's only Inno again who's the last one remaining. And this could well be the end of the game. The death timers are too long. Tower falls. The minion wave will be taxied in with Baron buff empowered. Rascal Jesters will start the season 2-0.
Well, on the side of AXIZ, bit of an anxious start to the season, not finding the fights they wanted, certainly not finding the victory.
And that will be GG's all around. Inno on the base. Gwen snips a few more, ends the game 5-1 and 7 does Kinatu, and solid showing from Rascal Jesters, though you've got to give credit to AXIZ. They put up a mean fight through the early and mid stages of that game.
They did. Still, a loss is a loss. That spring season form going to be continuing for kind of both of these teams. Interesting to see how it goes on from here.
Absolutely, it will. Of course, we might get ourselves a final breakdown after this, but we're not going to go and do that because we're going to go to a quick break instead. And when we're back, we'll have Naka the second here to give us even more insight into this Rascal Jesters win. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a bit of a post-game here, which was a touch closer for the Jesters. AXIZ, Naka, starting strong with some very slick early pathing towards the top side.
Yeah, I mean, AXIZ clearly had a game plan where they just, okay, put Hachimecha down. Okay, put him down. And so we had a lot of, I mean, the top player where Nocturne hit 6, immediately walks down, kills him on the Gromp. I mean, Hachimecha didn't get his Gromp for probably like 3 minutes throughout the entire game, just constantly being ganked and ganked. He got pushed down really early. And then, but again, scaling in League of Legends, it's a time bomb, and AXIZ could not explode the game fast enough. The Ezreal is starting to hit like a truck. I mean, even considering some questionable build paths, but he's starting to hit like a truck. Ezreal's getting into the game. Yumi's into the game. A lot of synergy coming through with the Rascal Jester squad. with the champions they played, and AXIZ kind of fell over.
Well, exactly that. I mean, we saw the really smart early path thing from Hoglet, using the Rumble, clearing red side, just turning up top, getting on Gwen. We saw the return to force Hatchimeter out of his jungle time and time again. But Jester still found ways to stop the snowball becoming too extreme in terms of the gold by turning up themselves towards the top lane once or twice. Now, it got a bit bloody up there.
Absolutely, and I mean, we saw the Gwen picked up, and Rascal Jesters in Kanatu, this rookie coming in this spring split, have put a lot of trust in the young player. Comes up really strong after the unfortunate early positioning, which led to that 2v1 death. Gets himself kind of the extra third summoner spell of his teammates coming to the play, and it's Hoglet that misreads the situation at the second time of asking. They die, and then at that point, you've already used quite a lot of your time and a lot of tools to try and get towards that top side. They use a Lucian teleport, they use an equalizer, and suddenly Kanatu sat there going, oh wait, this is the next 4 to 5 minutes where I'm actually kind of okay with things, right? Start building those micro advantages, and that kept Rascal Jester very much in the game after, as you were saying, AXIZ's early plan seemed to stymie some of that top side where we thought they would be putting more pressure for Rascal Jester.
Oh, yes, and while the gold was kept manageable, we'll say, what was not kept manageable for large swathes of that game was the dragon stacking, because the AXIZ got to soul point. It was looking pretty good. This Lucian as well, Megamin, coming up with a few big kills.
Yeah, I mean, I was sitting there watching the game. I'm like, okay, AXIZ, we're 3K gold ahead. We got 3 dragons. They have pure mid push and bot priority. There is no way that AXIZ can manage to lose the dragon. And they managed to lose the dragon.
All right. Now,
Mara,
take us on from there, because actually we did start having this conversation a bit. AXIZ kind of seemed to lose momentum in the mid to late.
Well, a lot of it kind of comes from that priority, and even though the gold was even, doesn't matter when it comes to fights when you don't have an equalizer because it's been used 4 or 5 times to clear out a mid wave, when you've got unsuccessful pushes into the bot lane, outer turret, not even pushing up into the inner. You've got a Lucian in the side lane, for God's sakes. You're meant to be winning these individual situations. Now, it wasn't the case. Hoglet overstepped too much, had to blow flashes and ultimates too. AXIZ were not clean enough in setting up the map, and that meant that when it came to this J-Ram mid-push setting with the siege comp and the siege tools which Rascal Jester had, they couldn't respond to it, and they kind of didn't manage to get themselves a foothold, even from that even gold, to start securing that soul and get a win condition.
Absolutely. Well, turns out Soul's Ezreal is still pretty damn nasty. Gwen should probably be played a little bit more over here. Just maybe a little bit. Either way, we're going to cut ourselves to a break, and when we come back, we'll have DFM back on the Rift, looking to redeem themselves after a bit of an unfortunate game 1, but this time up against their new perennial rivals in V3 Esports. Don't go anywhere. We're back after a quick break.